This ain't small talk. Yeah, this ain't small talk. This real talk from the streets to successful. Struggle to strategy, music, ultra proof, and unapologetic conversation. We talk life, us and healing in the calm behind the glow. No filters, no scripts, just voices that matter. If you move with purpose, think different and live uncut. Ride with us. Hosted by DJ Verrett, aka Mr. Ghost. This ain't just a podcast. Ride with us. Yeah.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is DJ Verrett, and I want to say welcome to Ride With Us. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself and how I got started. I grew up in Harbor City, California, first born, 1971. After that, I grew up in the neighborhood, no pops, two sisters, mom. Mom worked her ass off to try to give us a good life. She did everything she could to provide for us. So when I became a certain age, I gave my life and my will to the care of my neighborhood, you know, because I needed acceptance, companionship, and understanding. And in 1983, this new product came out called rock cocaine, which devastated the black community. But here comes the other ugly side of that stuff. I involved myself in it, and after that, I started slanging cocaine from the age of 13 all the way to 19. So I had basically a 6-year run in it, and unfortunately, I did pretty well in it. You know, in California, everybody was getting rich off this new product, and there was too much competition. A lot of violence came with it. And after that, one of my homeboys lived out of state in the Midwest, and he told me, why should we sell ounces for $350 when we can sell ounces out there for $1,800? Yes, $1,800. So what I did was I sold my little Regal. I bought a half a kilo of cocaine, which is 18 ounces, and I went out of town and sold each one for $1,800. Came back on TWA the same day I landed. I left the Midwest with a lot of damn money. Came back and I bought a kilo of cocaine. And I think I'm doing something good, you know, I'm balling, you know, the street life, the hustle. This is the way I thought I could cheat poverty. And everything changed. Everything changed. And then I started doing it once a month. 1 key, 2 key, 3 key, 4 keys, 5 keys. And I was making so much money, it was ridiculous. Didn't know really what to do with it. Just kept it in a duffel bag. You know, paranoia began to set in because, you know, now I'm balling, so-called street balling, and I got $500,000 in cash at the house in my little 2-bedroom apartment. And when I was 17 years old, my drinking whiskey increased, became more isolated. I became more angry because actually I really didn't know what I was contributing to. It was about get your money, get your wealth. And I thought that by selling drugs and making money would solve all of my problems, which it never did. It never solved any problems. Only thing it did was make sure my lights stay on and make sure that your lights stay off. It made sure that I'll be able to provide for my family by taking from your family. I'm just keeping it 100, y'all. So this is the life that I was living. And from there, man, I began to be by myself a lot because the women wasn't, you know, they wasn't the prize anymore. You know, the material shit wasn't the prize anymore. Nothing was making me happy. And as I began to wake up, man, I began to see the destruction that I was a part of in the pursuit of chasing wealth. And what happened was February 6, 1990, I gave my co-defendants a couple of them birds to take out of town for me. And they got arrested February 6, 1990. So, make a long story short, they got arrested by the feds. They called me. I was drinking that Jack Black and smoking blunts and stuff like that. And I thought I was getting actually robbed when the police broke into my house and they took me to jail. Thank God they didn't find the additional stuff that was in my house. And I went to a place called Metropolitan Detention Center, which is MDC. And I would always see this building on the 101 freeway. And I thought it was an office building. They really didn't know what it was, but these small little windows. So about 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning, I walked through the front doors with in handcuffs with the DEA. And they dropped me off. And that was February 6, 1990. I was 19 years old. And I was going to court at 312 North Spring Street. And I went in there, and this was ridiculous that I never knew about this part of the game. Feds. The same judge that gave those LAPD officers that beat the shit out of Rodney King, that's the same judge that sentenced me. The prosecutor, he was a black dude named Jeffrey W. Johnson. I thought that I was going to get some love because he was a black prosecutor, but he was black only by skin color. You know what I'm saying? And from there, man, I pled guilty to 20 years. I pled guilty to 20 years. I was 19. I spent all these years in prison. I spent 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36. I got out of prison at the age of 36 years young. Now, the most important time in the young black man's life is between the ages of 20 and 35. And that determines what kind of life you may live. But if you have a criminal background, you spent half your life incarcerated, what kind of life do you think you can live? I went to some of America's notorious violent federal prisons. I went to Lompoc USP. I went to Atlanta USP. But the most violent institution that I was in was a place called ADX, or USP Florence, Colorado. The day I got to Florence, Colorado, you do a SHU program, a captain's review. And what that means is that they put you in the hole for 7 days, and they see what type of person you are. Well, this is the crazy part, man. When they put me in a cell with this one cat, man, there was a pungent smell coming through the vents. Now, we thought it was a rat or, something that died in the vents. But actually, in the cell next to me, the guy cut his cellie open. He killed him. He cut his throat, opened his chest, and flushed all of his organs down the toilet. I'm like, God damn, this is some crazy ass shit, And then when I get out the hole, I meet the homies. I was in Delta unit, and after that, man, we come from the chow hall, and this is the furthest that California Mexicans or Latinos can go to, which is Florence, Colorado, because you got them Texas syndicates, the TS. So we on the bleachers, smoking cigarettes, and after the noon meal, so the unit next to us, they was taking the Serrano out of the unit because they were handcuffed. He was handcuffed, and they're escorting him back to SHU. So the Texas structure, or TS, they sent one of their hitmen to go blast him. And blast him means go kill him right now. And as they're walking across the yard, you see these Texas SAs run up and started stabbing dude. The COs left, And this dude's handcuffed behind his back on the ground while these two other SAs are stabbing him to death. And then that's when the gun tower opened up and fired them shots. Shot the knife out of one of them TS's hands. And I'm like, God damn. I get here, I get to USP Florence, man, and the dude kills the cellie next door, opens his guts, disembowels him, flushes all of his organs, kidneys, heart, all down the toilet. Next day, I get out the hole, and they're killing somebody. So this was a violent environment, and I'm like, damn. But when I hit the yard, the homies gave me a pack of Camels, a big-ass knife, and some wine. So I'm up in my cell, saying, damn, how did I get to this place? This is the part of the lifestyle that motherfuckers don't actually say. You dig what I'm saying? When you a youngster. One thing about the penitentiary, you cannot run and you cannot let nobody disrespect you. And so you got to catch these fades. Fades means you got to fight somebody. You dig? And so from there, man, I'm in the unit and I'm getting some ice, and this older white dude named Maynard Campbell didn't know that he was a Montana freedman, and he was causing all kind of havoc with the administration. And this is real talk, man. So I'm right there talking to one of the homies, and these two other white boys walk up and they start talking to Maynard, and they pull out these knives and fucking killed his ass right then and there. And the sad thing about it is that couldn't do nothing about it, just walk away, go lock up in the cell because it's getting ready to be a lockdown. Man, all this stuff that I had to endure and experience, and this is what I like to share with these youngsters, that, you live this lifestyle, this is the kind of results that you're going to actually live, you dig what I'm saying? And so this is kind of stuff that happened. And after that, I got transferred again. Make a long story short, man, this was some crazy, crazy type stuff. So make a long story, what happened was I got loaded. I did what I did. I was doing what I was doing, getting into politics, fighting, shoe time, program time, all this kind of stuff, man. So it was July 3rd, 2005. I'm in the day room. I've been in the penitentiary like 15 years during this time, man. And excuse me. I've been in prison about 15 years now, so I'm in the day room, and I just like getting high too. I'm 210 pounds. I'm posted up in the day room, and my homie's like, "Ghost, wake up, homie, wake up!" And I'm in the nod in front of the TV room, and I'm in a room full of killers now, and these motherfuckers say, "Man, this nigga always been like that." That's what they said, homie. Ghost always been like that, and I heard it, but I couldn't respond to it. So, make a long story short, I woke up on July 3rd, 2005 at 4:32 a.m. and I said, man, I'm getting ready to go home. I got a few left, and I got to change this shit because I've accomplished absolutely nothing. When I was in the penitentiary, I accomplished absolutely nothing. And so I put my beanie on, put my jacket on, my headphones, and I went out to the front of the unit because something was getting ready to happen. I didn't know it was an internal thing, so I put my headphones in because I didn't want to be talked to by nobody, and I rolled up a cigarette, and that's when I saw this lady, this older lady. She was 70 years young. She was wearing a white sweater with pink elephants on it, some black slacks, and she had a pink box in her hand. I thought she might have been a Christian or Jehovah's Witness or something, so I followed her and followed her up into the rooms, man. And she was a volunteer of this activity called Hospitals and Institutions, which is for H&I for short. So I walked up in the hallway, and I walked into the room, and she smiled and said hello, and I said, what's this? And she said, this is a recovery meeting. And I threw up the deuces, boom, because I ain't about no recovery, you know what I'm saying? So she walked in the hallway and said, young man, would you like one of these donuts? And for the life of me, y'all, man, I could not turn it down. And I said, yes, ma'am. And she said some most profound words I've ever heard in my life. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Now, me, I'm a smart dummy, so I heard all kind of stuff, because when you in SHU or special housing unit, all they give you is a Bible or Quran. So I've read them books. I've retained the information, but I've never heard "grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change," and that changed my life right then and there. I left the meeting, went back to the unit, and I just stayed quiet. So there was this lieutenant. He was a correctional officer when I first started my prison sentence. So we kind of started the prison careers together, you dig? And I'm walking across the yard, and he's like, "What's going on, convict?" I'm like, "Oh man, I just left one of them recovery meetings, and I actually like it." And he was like, not knowing that he was in recovery too. And he was like, "Man," he said, "How much time you got left?" I said, "A few left." And he was like, "So what do you think about the recovery meeting?" I said, "Man, I like it." And he was like, "Okay." I said, "But I'm dirty as a motherfucker right now." Dirty. He said, "Really?" I'm like, "Yeah." He said, "You want to get clean?" I said, "Yes, I do want to get clean." And he said, "Okay, I'll help you out." So he said, "I'll be up there in the unit, in a little bit. I want you to disobey a direct order." So I went upstairs. Now, you got to understand, I had a half ounce of heroin and $50 packs behind my photo albums, in my photo album, behind my photos, and behind the pictures. And and then from there, man, I'm getting ready to keister a few, just in case I make a mistake. Because remember, I've been doing heroin for 12 years up in the penitentiary. That was my currency, because I would have them females commit these goddamn crimes, basically, because I was selfish, self-seeking, and self-centered, and that's what I would do. So basically, dog, I was getting ready to keister something, but they came in a little bit too soon. And he was like, "Cuff up, Verrett, cuff up." I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, "Man, this is a mistake, because I was feeling good for a moment, that I do want to get clean because of what I heard. But then now, here comes the time to actually get clean and get sober." So I told Lieutenant, "Man, I'm good." He's like, "Nah, convict, cuff up." So remember, I'm 210 pounds. I got a 405 flat bench. I'm strong as a motherfucker. And I wrestle with these motherfuckers, man. I wrestle with 4COs, man. They finally wrestled. They finally got me, put me on my chest and cuffed me and four-pointed me and took me out the hole. Now, what I'm scared about is not the hole, not doing a SHU program. What I'm afraid and terrified about is what's going to happen when I'm locked in that concrete cell, in that concrete 6x9 cell. That's what I'm going to be afraid of, because I know I've been using heroin constantly for 12 years. I'm going to get sick. He came in and was like, "Man, I've been sober 25 years. Don't worry, I got you." When they finally put me in SHU, and he opened the food trap, he gave me a half a pack of Marlboro Red 100s and some Hershey Kisses and said, "Man, I'm going to be checking on you." And I'm trying to convince myself that this is not going to be that bad. It's not going to be that bad. And then the symptoms hit. If you ever did heroin before, you know what the symptoms going to be like when you get sick. And it started hitting. And nothing was going to stop it, man. The lights never cut off. The body aches, the flu-like symptoms, the guts, the turning of my guts, my eyelashes hurt, everything hurt. And everything is liquefied inside your body. So you actually shit on yourself, and bad diarrhea, all that stuff, man. And he would come check on me, give me Hershey Kisses, those little chocolates, and he would give me Marlboro Red 100s. Man, I stayed in that motherfucking SHU for 33 days, and I got out clean. But now, what do I do now? So what happened after that, I went to the homies and I told the homies, I'm like, check this out, dog. I'm done. I gave up all my knives. I told my counselor, his name is Iganaway. He was an African dude. He was kind of cool. I was like, man, take all them females off my visiting list. I stopped sitting in the day room with the homies. I stopped doing all this other stuff. And I started picking up these recovery books, and I started sitting on the bleachers, just reading this stuff. And I found my story in this thing called recovery. But what was the baffling part was these volunteers, they kept coming in and they were talking about how your life could be different if you do what we do. And that's when I thought, man, my whole life, I've copied the wrong damn cats my whole damn life. So then I started hearing these stories of these men and women that were coming inside the penitentiary talking about these 12 steps of recovery. And they were all different types of people. And I said, man, I've copied the wrong cats my whole life. Ain't nothing wrong with being a copycat as long as you copy the right cats. So, man, the day I was getting out, man, there was 2 phone numbers that I had. I had one for H&I, and I had one for my mother. I called H&I. They came to pick me up. They took me to a meeting. I wanted to go get some pussy, basically. That's what I wanted. But they were like, nah, Liz and the H&I people picked me up and took me to a meeting called Marina Pacifica in Long Beach. And no social skills, no nothing. And Liz was like, go inside there and tell them you're going to lead the meeting. So I led the meeting with like, hey, my name Ghost, and I just got out of prison like 30 minutes ago. And everybody said, welcome. These men in recovery just surrounded me. And because of that right there, man, my willingness to be able to change the things I can, my life is totally different. So what happened was I had this PO. His name was Jared Connelly in Long Beach. And he told me that within 6 months that you're going to be back in custody. Either you're going to violate or you're going to catch a new case because I did so much time and no education. But I never talked about my program of recovery. Never. And I just said, okay, whatever you say, whatever I need to do to clear the records of my past. And these jobs I had, twirling signs for $8 an hour, changing oil, digging ditches, I did everything that I had to do in order not to do anything illegal. And then I found my first little studio apartment in Playa del Rey on my 15-hour pass. My only intentions was, on my 15-hour pass, was to go to the beach and knock me a female. That was it, But as I'm walking back to the bus stop, I saw the studio apartment. It was like for rent. And it was like $700. So I called the number and the lady came out and was like, man, what do you do? And I said, man, I help people. I got a job. I could pay $700 a month. Man, she gave me the apartment. So now life is getting to change a little bit differently now, right? I'm going to meetings. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. But I didn't have an education. I never completed high school. So at the age of 38, I went back to high school, and I graduated high school at 38 years young. And most of them students thought I was a parent. But I was like, no, I'm a student. I'm graduating at 38 years young. Then I went to West LA Community College after that. So check this out, y'all. One day, man, my life is getting ready to change now, right? Because now I did go back to the neighborhood, but I felt out of place there. You dig what I'm saying? I did go to hood days, and, I'm seeing the sheriffs and I'm seeing the LAPD, and, motherfuckers got pistols on them. And, it's like, I don't feel comfortable doing this. So, I stopped doing all that stuff. So I was at a meeting one day, and this lady, her name was Kathy, she walked up to me and was like, hey, excuse me, we like your look. You think you could play a convict? I started laughing. And I said, why? She said, because we work on this TV show called Sons of Anarchy. And so they gave me her card, man, and I went to the show, and that's when my life changed. I went to the set of Sons of Anarchy. I didn't know who was deputies, who was convicts, or who, I thought it was all real. And when I saw Kathy, I'm like, what's this? She's like, sweetheart, this is all made up, make believe. And remember, I've never been on TV before. I've never been on a TV set. And so they're talking to me one day and they're like, man, is this real? I'm like, nah, that's not real. And so Charlie, big shout out to Mike Bent, Theo, Big Jimmy, big shout out to all y'all. And they're like, is this real? I'm like, nah, you got to do it like this. And then that's when they said, okay, you're going to do this. I'm like, I ain't an actor. He said, well, act like you in prison. So big shout out to Mike Bent. We had to stab Mike Bent we had to stab his ass. And, on set, and they're like, cut. And I took pictures with all them, man. So big shout out to Theo, Charlie, Ron and Mark and Kim. I went home, man, on the freeway, dog. I'm crying. You know what I'm saying? And the funny thing about it is that when that show aired, all the homies in the day room, like, that's that motherfucker Ghost right there. That's the homie. And I was sending pictures back to the penitentiary. Now, remember, I'm going to work, I'm going to meetings, and start doing this volunteer work. And I started getting calls, man. I worked with LL Cool J on NCISLA. I worked with Selena Gomez on her TV shows, man. I worked on all these shows, man, going to Hollywood red carpet premieres. And I'm like, damn, how the hell did this happen? How the hell did this happen? Smoking cigarettes with David Carradine, Sam Jackson, all them, man. And they're like, we're in the green room. This is a funny thing. In 2008, remember I got out 2007. So 2008, we're doing the Hollywood Christmas parade. And so I'm back there and they're like, man, so what, how long you been in the business? I said, about 4 months. They're like, so what you used to do before that? Like, man, I tore Verizon wireless signs and change oil for Easy Lube. Like, not serious. I'm like, I'm serious. They said, what you do before that? I said, a 20-year prison sentence. They're like, 20-year prison sentence. And so Sam Jackson was like, fuck you did a 20-year prison sentence, motherfucker? I'm like, yeah, I did. And then my PO called me. Hold on. Let me back up a little bit. So now I'm on the float with actress Lorna Scott on the float, waving at motherfuckers on the Hollywood Christmas parade in 2008. Remember, I'm on paper. I'm on parole and probation. I'm waving at motherfuckers on the red carpet on Hollywood Boulevard and a white Cadillac with the actress Lorna Scott, waving at people. Big shout out to Monique Moss too, who was my publicist. Big shout out to you. My PO saw it. He called me on my little singular wireless flip phone and said, was that you? I'm like, yep. I said, I'll make my curfew by 10 p.m. After that, man, he said, man, you can go ahead and stay. So I told my publicist, Monique Moss, and I said, that was my PO. I don't have to be home by 10 o'clock, but I have to go see him Monday. So I'm thinking that I got to take a piss test. Now, I'm sober. I'm not drinking. I'm not using. I'm not doing nothing but going to meetings, going to school, and going home. And I went to go see him Monday morning. I was like, I'm ready to pee in the bottle. He was like, Mr. Verrett, you ain't got to do that. You ain't got to do that. He said, go get you a lawyer and you can manage your own life. So I contacted this attorney named James Blatt, and he was going to represent me. So we went back to court. The old judge I had died, and this new judge named Christina A. Snyder. And she was a judge. So we went to court at 312 North Spring Street, and my lawyer represented me, and the prosecutor was there. And it was like, man, is this true? I'm like, yeah. Now you got to understand that this was Christmas Eve of 2008. And I'm like, yes, Your Honor, this is all I'm doing. My PO was like, Your Honor, he can manage his own life. I never talked about the program of recovery. Never talked about the program of recovery. I just did what they told me to do, what my sponsor told me to do, and I just did it. And on Christmas Eve of 2008, the judge said, it is so ordered. We're going to terminate your supervision. I was supposed to get off on 2012, but this was 2008. Banged the gavel, and then they sent it to me. And I've been on probation since I was like 13. Now I'm damn near 40 years old, under no supervision. My mind tells me, man, you never had a problem with weed. You never had a problem with this and that. And I romanticized that shit for hours until this dude knocked on my door and said, "Is that your car with the recovery symbol on the back?" And I'm like, "Yes." And he said, "Man, I want to get clean too." This dude was getting ready to kill himself. He had a pistol on the table with a half ounce of crack cocaine, dog shit everywhere, and I flushed I put the half ounce of rock cocaine in the garbage disposal and poured out all the alcohol. We went to a meeting that night. He didn't know that he saved my life, and he thinking I'm saving his life, but that dude saved my life. Man, from there, man, I began to share at meetings, getting calls, and I'm start seeing the world now. I called my manager and said, "I don't want to do this TV stuff no more." And he was like, "Why?" I said, "I just don't want to do it no more." And he was like, "Man, you're working a lot. You're working a lot." I was like, "I just don't want to do this," because I really couldn't relate, to a lot of people. I've been to charities like Robert Shapiro, his sons, he died of an overdose. So I would go support that. I met Kim Kardashian before she blew up. Big shout out to Kim. Paris Hilton. I met Paris Hilton, smoked cigarettes with her at Robert Shapiro's spot, at fundraiser. And there's a lot of good people that I did meet. And so, Kim, if you're watching this, man, I got a nonprofit called You Can. So I want you to hit me up. But as I was saying I left all that stuff alone, went back to school, and I became a drug and alcohol counselor. I worked in the field for many, many years. I became a certified drug and alcohol counselor, case manager, and then I worked for this program for reentry, and I became the clinical supervisor for the reentry program for men getting out of prison. I helped redesign the reentry program. And my life began to unfold exponentially. Now I'm getting years of sobriety. I'm working with other people. I got jail clearance. So I go inside Men's Central, Twin Towers, all the county jails to go do a reentry program and talk about the program of recovery. And one day, one of my supervisors, his name was Dave, he was my counselor when I was in the penitentiary. And he was getting ready to retire. He was like, "Hey, DJ, why don't you go try to start your own organization?" I said, "I can't." He said, "You can." And that's how my nonprofit started, was saying you can. So I changed You Can to Urban Community Action Network. We're a 501c3 located in Inglewood, California. And life was good, man. Got married, got divorced. I got twin girls, Lola and Leah. Love them girls more than anything. I get to be the father I never had to them. And one day everything is going good, man. I'm on my motorcycle, man, and I'm going to a meeting, and I get hit on the freeway. Broke my arm, my shoulder, my ribs. Almost died. And now I'm home, partially paralyzed on this side of my body, and on my left side of my body, and I'm left-handed. And I got upset with God. All the work that I do, this is what you do to me. It was never God. It's just life on life terms. And so I've never written a grant before, but I know the business. I know the language. I have a nonprofit just on paper. So they were talking about these grants. So I sat in bed, man, with my right hand, with my index finger, and I wrote the grant. Boom, 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 put all my EIN numbers in there, put all my paperwork in there, and answered spoke the language on paper about this grant about expanding safety and reducing trauma trauma. And October 17th of 2023, I got the email back and said, congratulations. Now, this is only 27 days after I got to that motorcycle accident, which I was partially paralyzed on my left side. I opened my laptop up and said, congratulations, Mr. Verrett. Your organization just received $1.2 million in grant funding. I'm like, oh my God. Now, I was selling dope and never got that kind of money before. You know what I'm saying? And then a couple of days later, I got another email and said, congratulations, Mr. Verrett. You just received $250,000 in grant funding. So I had $1.5 million. I hired a lot of people. I'm in my office right now. I'm sharing this story. Excuse me. I'm sharing this story with you is because I began to copy the right cats. The trauma that I've endured, I've got that adjudicated or addressed. I don't have to sit with it any longer. And this is one of the problems that a lot of people like myself never advance themselves, or because my decision making was off. I copied the wrong cats. My life is fantastic today, and it's all because of that old grandmother who was 70 years young named Liz Tucker, who's been in my life ever since. She passed away on August 31st of 2020. She watched me grow. She watched me blossom. I love that lady. I was there when she took her last breath. And so I'm sharing all this with y'all because it's real, you know. Now, we say $1.5 million is a lot of money. That's not my money. That's my organization's money. That money is only to provide the services that are needed for reentry, to expand safety in Los Angeles, you know, and to pay my staff, my building, my rent, you know, all that stuff. That's not my money. That money is only used to provide the services, you know, and that's what I get a chance to do today. You know, I'm the executive director of Urban Community Action Network, also known as UCAN. And my staff is fantastic. I want to send a big shout out to Amity. I want to send a big shout out to J-Cod. I want to send a big shout out to the whole team because you guys made my dream come true. You know, I'm dreaming out loud today. I'm a father. I provide for my family. I've been 20 years sober, and it's good. God is good all the time, not just when everything is going my way. God is good when things are not going my way, and thank God that I got a fellowship that I can rely upon during a time of emergency. You know, now it's all about acceptance, companionship, and understanding, and this is what I get from my fellowship. You know, I get a chance to take my children to school every morning, help them with homework. It is amazing, y'all. It is so amazing. And I just want to put this out there like that. If you know anybody that may be struggling, contact us at www.ucanla.org. And I also I forgot, there's a man named Christopher Kennedy Lawford. He's JFK's nephew, Peter Lawford from the Rat Pack. That's his son. He introduced me to a whole new way of life. This is a big shout out to Chris, man. He had passed away a couple of years ago, and I know he's watching, you know. So big shout out to Chris Lawford, man. I love you and I miss you. And I will see you soon, but not too damn soon. You know what I'm saying? I love you, man. And all those that have a family member that's struggling with mental health, substance use, you know, hit us up, man. And we can also use your support. So hit that donation button on the website. Come on in. We do an outreach on Skid Row every other Sunday on 6th and San Pedro at 10 a.m. You will see a whole bunch of people wearing bright fluorescent yellow T-shirts that says "You Can" on it. Join us. Join us. I want to send a big shout out to my board. Couldn't do it without you guys, without your direction. And I think that's enough for me. I've been talking for like an hour, but I just wanted to put this out there that we can recover. And hit me up. My name is DJ. I want y'all to ride with us. Peace.
That's today's episode. Appreciate you riding.
Thanks for listening.
Subscribe, leave a comment, and follow us everywhere. DJ Verrett, aka Mr. Ghost. Ride with.